When they said As the Story Grows, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that one. Right on.
Welcome to As the Story Grows. I'm Brian Patton. Today we welcome back to the podcast Aaron Stone from My Epic. My Epic will release their incredible new record, Loriella, this Friday, June 28th on Tooth and Nail Records. Aaron talks about signing with Tooth and Nail and the process of waiting to announce their signing, and then we dive into the writing process, lyrical approach, recording, and hopes for Loriella. I've been a My Epic fan since their debut, and I can say that this is easily their most ambitious work to date. It's an absolute headphone experience and worth spending time with. So whether you've been a longtime fan or have never listened to My Epic, I highly recommend giving Loriella a spin this Friday. Thanks so much for checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and thank you so much for giving this interview a listen. You can join the show over on Discord, where you can hang out with our podcast community. You can sign up for our mailing list over on Substack, or you can support the show financially and get early access to every episode over on Patreon. Links are in the show notes or at asthestorygrows.com. Enjoy today's conversation with Aaron Stone from My Epic.
Facing, taking hits. Will you recognize what's left of you? Place my hand upon your lips. That dog bit you as a kid.
This press release says you guys signed to Tooth and Nail in 2020. So I guess what led you to Tooth and Nail? I assume your contract with Facedown just ended and you... So what led you to Tooth and Nail, and kind of why the delay in announcing your signing?
Yeah, they're both like not terribly exciting answers, but they're so the truth is we hadn't had a record deal with Facedown in like 4 or 5 records. Okay. We're just so close. Like Jason is one of my best friends. Jason, Virginia, and Davey and Shannon are some of my best friends. And so I think after like Broken Voice or Behold, they were like, you don't have a contract anymore. And it wasn't that we didn't want one or they didn't want one. It was just like felt superfluous. Like, yeah. They'd be like, are you ready to make new music? And we'd be like, yeah. And then we'd be like, we want to go record with Goldman. And like, well, we'll talk to him about budget. And it was just all felt like really like family. Yeah. And so we had been there for a long time, but we hadn't had a contract. And then we were sort of getting older, and it felt like the last few records we were really proud of the work, but it didn't feel like we were making any much headway. We'd make a few new fans, and then, but like not at any real rate that felt like, wow, all the work we're putting into it. And I feel like we're evolving as artists and getting better at what we do. And so our management wanted to put our name out there and see if anybody else maybe who had different connections. Like we can't say enough about what Facedown had done for us, but we had sort of felt like, well, as far as we were going to get with that team, we needed to change some things about the team. Yeah. And so Jason and Virginia and everybody gave their blessing. They're like, if you can get a good deal somewhere, then, and if not, we'll put the next record out, obviously. Yeah. And so we shopped around, and we had a friendship with Tooth and Nail for a while. I mean, we've known Adam for a long time, and Nate, who's in our band, had produced many records. He's a producer for them. And so they offered a great deal, and it was like, oh, well, this may be these are people we also trust. And it would be an opportunity for us to see if like they can push us into other markets or help us find other people. I mean, it's often I'll make a friend in real life, and if they tell me what they like and the music is anywhere near us, and then eventually it comes up that I play music. Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, you might like us. And it's amazing how often they really like it. And like if we were in the right ears, people would like it. So I was like, who else can put us out there? So then the reason for the pause was just, well, obviously in 2020, something happened to all of us. and then and so they were like, well, we'll announce once we start rolling out the record. Like that'll be all like it'll be announced first single, album's coming out, and then we'll start like releasing the record. And so and Adam and the label was just like, you just guys take your time, let us know when you're done. They wrote us a big check and never bugged us. We would check in and be like, we're working really hard, but COVID happened. I had a baby, and then Nate, who is in our band, who's also produced this record, had some health challenges, and not to mention we felt like this was like a new start, so we wanted to get it right. We haven't done a full length in 10 years, so it probably would have taken longer than we wanted anyway. But the baby, the health stuff, COVID, all like made it worse. So that's why it took so long. Is they were just like, well, we'll announce it when the record's ready, and they were super patient. Like they let us call our own shots, so it was awesome. But yeah, we were hoping this record would be coming out in late 2022, but here we are, and we're proud of it, and we everything's the way we want it to be. So that's amazing.
That's cool. Is it like, having come up through the Christian scene to be on Tooth and Nail, is there some like, not like you made it, but is it like just a cool thing, like a feather in your cap or something? Or
yeah, it's funny. If you'd have told me when I was 15 that I would get to sign to Tooth and Nail, I would have like died of joy. Because I started on punk and ska, and then found my way into emo and hardcore and like everything. My first influences were definitely like early grunge, and but Tooth and Nail when I was 15 was like where I wanted to be. Now at this age, it's just I know the people that run the label, and I know a lot of the bands. So the sort of like the mystique of it has gone away, and now it's more based in like, oh, they're good people and they'll do good with the record. But it was fun to get to tell. Like, I don't want to sound spoiled. Like, it's incredibly amazing that they would consider us. But telling a bunch of my high school buddies was fun, because like to them, like they still thought like we were going to be going. That meant we were going to be playing for 1,000 people tomorrow, and it's like, well, we might, but that won't be the only reason. That won't be the reason why. So it is. Yes, like there's a part of me that's happy, but like 20 years ago, it stopped being a goal and started to just be a like, oh, that's a real thing that's within the reach. So I am super thankful. They've been amazing. I'm more stoked about what the relationship is like, and than like being tied to the Supertones or something, which is like, even though like, I loved the Supertones when I was 15. So it's a little bit of both for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. Because COVID happens and you have this baby and there's health issues in the band. Was there ever a point in the process where you were like, I don't know if we're going to make this record. I don't know if we're going to finish it. Maybe my epic has seen its last days.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I never would have consciously thought that or said that, because I will probably always write music and put it out, and that'll probably always be called my epic, and I'll always do it with my closest friends who want to do it at the time. But I did subconsciously have to do a mental trick of like, it took so long. We've never done this before. We've always been like, when the record's 80% written, we tell the label tells the studio, we set everything up, and then it starts a ticking clock, and it just is what it is. And that meant that we've gotten a lot of music out over the years, but it'd also be like every record, there'd be a couple songs. There's no such thing as perfect with art, but there'd be a couple songs that didn't feel right. Where like, you're so far down the road and you just have to finish it. And you're like, they sound good. No one's going to complain. Like, everybody's going to like the songs if they like us, but we know they're not what we wanted them to be. The quality's not wrong. Like, the type is wrong. And so we kept going back to like, let's for once make sure all 10 songs, like we have tons of songs that are right over the years, but there's always a couple. So that was kind of the modus operandi to start off with, was like, let's fight for all 10 songs to be right, and let's not stop till they are. But it took so long. Yeah, I remember I told my wife, like, when everything started to finally get finished and turned in, I was like, oh, I realized it's like someone told me my friend who died isn't dead. Like, in my subconscious, I just pretended like most days I couldn't think about it. Like, if I had something to do on it, I would work on it. And if I didn't, if I was like waiting on mixing or health stuff or whatever, I would just have to not think about it and focus on something else. So I don't think I ever really thought there was anything in danger. It's just like, the bigger danger was, were we going to take so long that the label would be like, all right, that's enough, guys. It's been 10 years. It's your Chinese democracy. Let's move on. Would the band quit, and would it end up being some acoustic thing? And would these files be lost? Like that maybe, but never that like that would break I'm much more interested in being a lifelong artist than I am in the business side of things. Gotcha. And I'm trying to get better at that because I want to succeed. I want it to be sustainable. So I'm just like, well, I'll find another way to keep making songs, but I did have to like treat it a bit like a girl who broke up with me. And if I'm too needy, I'll definitely not get her back. Yeah.
Yeah. At what point did the writing process start for this album? And like, because the label just said like, take your time, we'll get to it when we'll get to it. Did that free you guys up to experiment and try new things?
Sure, 100%. Like the label knew that take your time meant we were already working in earnest. Like the moment that Violence was out, Jeremiah, who has been in the band with me for 15 years and just left right after Violence, still my neighbor, still one of my best friends, just his season of life changed. He was the one who's like, we need to start writing right now. Like we need to start right away. Like Violence was coming out and I was like, dude, my tank's empty. Like I wrote everything. And Nate was like, well, he's a producer for a living. He's like, I'll have riffs. I'll bring something while you're spinning up your riffs. I'll bring some stuff. And so we started writing like either late 2019 or early 2020, like right away. And then we were always working on it in earnest. Like the label knew we were never like, oh yeah, we're taking 3 months just to like sit around. It was like, either we're working on it or someone's health is being like something's being done that needs to be done. Yeah. We weren't just like take it forever, but it was we were writing right away. And then as far as experimentation goes, like the process was so different, Brian. It was like nothing we've ever done. Like always it's like we would make demos and get the demos like 80%. And then I would start writing, I'm always write lyrics like second. And then I end up writing lyrics and melodies, and that it changes the demos a little bit, but not a ton. And then we go to studio and you're just kind of like fixing everything over 3 weeks. And then we do some post-production since two of our members can kind of produce themselves. This time it was like, we've done all of our records for the last 10 or 12 years with Matt Goldman, who's the best one, like a member of the band, one of our best friends. And this time it was just a sense of like, we should just change something else. And so Nate, who's been in the band now for 8 years and is a full-time producer, he had always been like, oh, I don't want to produce. Like Goldman's the best. I just want to be in the band. I'm used to producing. I don't want to wear that hat. And this time he was like, I want the ball. Like, it's not that it was better. It was different. And it was like, well, he's been in the van all the time and he knows exactly like the vibe. And also we're going to take so long that even though Tooth and Nail gave us a lot more money, we're going to use it like several times over. And Nate's the only one who would like basically work for a third of the pay and then do the other 2/3 for free. Yeah. Because like we're good enough to know what we're capable. I mean, the best way I've described it, and I say all this, Brian, in like humility of like, people can think whatever they want about the record. That's their opinion. Like, and so much of that has to do with context. Like maybe they heard an old record of ours at the right time and they loved it. Maybe they hear the new one and they don't like, but as far as our perspective of like the production and the songwriting goes, like it kind of felt like we were always able to run a 4-minute mile, but it just never happened. Like our fitness wasn't quite right. We didn't have the right shoes. The weather was never right. And this time we just kept working and working, and we've done enough work also to not get stuck in endless revision, like to not be chasing perfection, but to be chasing like rightness. And so yeah, we have like literally 3 songs on this record. Late Bloomer, the first track, Make Believe, which is the second to last track. Those will be actually the next 2 singles. Okay. And Northstar, which was the first single. And they all sound nothing like the first demo. Yeah. Like there's like nothing that's the same, but there was something emotionally that was right. And you keep changing it and dominoes keep going. But we've never gone to studio, done drums and guitars and thrown it away. We've always like just tweaked it until it's close enough or till it works out or till it's right. And this time, like Late Bloomer was a giant riffy kind of my epic-y song. And by the time I finished it, it had morphed into this beautiful thing. And like, we threw all that in the trash. And did tons of like Make Believe is like very heavily vocoded, but we did this weird treatment where we used like real space to like make it sound grounded. And that was originally like an acoustic song. And so it wasn't just farting around. It was like the emotion, like with Late Bloomer, for instance, like we wrote the giant version, we recorded it. I had melodies and dummy lyrics. And then as I wrote the dummy lyrics, I was just, a lot of times I'll write to the demo and then that'll get stale. So I'll pick up an acoustic and I'll just kind of play chords. And as we did that, I discovered this accidental acoustic version. And so when I sat down to play it for Nate, to be like, okay, I finished the lyrics. What do you think? And when I finished playing it, I was just playing an acoustic because we were in the room by ourselves. He was like, that's way more powerful. And everything else needs to go away and we need to underline that. And so all those choices were more about like, what is right for the song. And so, yeah, it allowed us. So thanks again to Tooth and Nail and Tanner for hanging in with me. But it was a decision we all felt good about. The whole band was like, yes, this part needs to die. So it was super different. And that meant the whole like me mindset of like letting it die in my brain for a while was like, it's always been so much quicker, and the reward, like we're writing and then in a year it's out. Yeah. And this is like some of these songs I wrote 3 years ago. And thankfully, like we weren't chasing our tails, or else I think now we'd feel stale, but it's like fresh again because it's exciting to share them.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm listening to the record. I mean, you've been a band that has experimented and done different things throughout the years anyways, but like Heavy Heart is the most traditional, like my epic-y song, where this record is so lush and layered. And like, I've listened to it a few times, but like I walked the dog and put the headphones on this morning, and there are things you're picking up in headphones that you're just not hearing playing it through, this studio speakers or whatever. And you're just like, there's a whole lot going on. And I think you're rewarded by it because it's a phenomenal record that I think elevates the band to the next level.
Thank you, man. We super appreciate that. And again, recognize that all music is contextualized and people will experience it where they do so. But I do think that one difference this time, Brian, is we unleashed Nate's superpower. Like in the past, Nate has only been he's been a writer, and he's co-produced some stuff, especially on Ultraviolet, and him and Goldman were close. But that didn't quite go as well as they both wanted it to. Like I'm happy with that record, but they both felt like, it's kind of weird to not know who exactly was the chef, and they're best buds. So there was some things that maybe they both felt like both of them didn't love some things, not that the other person did, but that they felt like kind of fell between them. And so this time it was like, okay, we're going to let Nate use his other superpower, which is production, which is spending copious amounts of time. And again, like if we were able to let Goldman spend 3 years producing a record, it would sound this rich too. Yeah. And it would be different because Nate and Goldman are different, but that's the superpower, is that like Nate could put as much intention in every sound and every tone. And we were both, it's a very maximalist record, whereas like something like Yet is like very stripped down, and I love maximalism and I like minimalism. Like there's a different time, but it just felt like the right way to make the record. And the other thing I'll say for Nate is that like he'll say like, it's easy to make tones sound good now. Like there's so many great plugins. Right. Like you can just make a guitar sound good, like really quickly. If the player's good and the riff is good, then there's bedroom stuff that's going to sound dope. So now the challenge is like to make everything sound special and different. Yeah. And it's better if it sounds weird, but weird in the right way, that it gets the emotion. It's all back to like, it really is back to a singer-songwriter approach of like, what is the song saying? What's the emotion of it? Mm-hmm. And let's serve that. And there's some of the softer stuff on the record has sort of I don't know if people call it like the California new folk, like Blake Mills, Phoebe Bridgers, like that kind of approach. Yeah. I had a hard time with folk forever because I like how tight the songs are written. Like your classic kind of Americana, like John Prine or whatever, Four Chords and the Truth. Like they put so much time to like write a killer melody and say something really powerful. But then it was like the approach to producing those records is like, just put a mic in and don't mess it up. And I appreciate that, but it doesn't do it for me, because I like there to be as much intention in I'm more of like a Radiohead Deftones kid. So like I want to hear like lots of cool soundscapes, and so to be able to take even some of the softer stuff and put as much intention in every sound as there is in the chords and the melody. And it felt really special to do that. It felt new. Yeah. So I'm glad you're picking. There's a lot of ear candy. It's an ear candy record for sure.
Like, I don't remember what song it was, but you had like the string section going on and they're panned and they're going back and forth. And it's just like so cool to listen to.
It might be Northstar, honestly.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, talk about your lyrical process. It seems like you have evolved over the years. I think it started with Ultraviolet and Violence, but especially on this record, there's maybe less, I don't know, storytelling and more a poetic vibe to the lyrical approach, in my opinion, especially on this record.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Good catch. And you're right about the eras too. Like around Viscera, which is right before Ultraviolet, is kind of like to me a hinge. And then the newer stuff. I think our early songs are very didactic. Like I have a thing I want to teach or say, and I'm trying to be very clear about it. There is some storytelling, which I still, that part still applies a little bit. It's kind of more buried. I think I've just grown more in love with I used to always think that anyone who wasn't being clear was trying to hide something, and or was not deep enough to say anything interesting. So they would like try to cover it in poetry and act like they said something. But as I've grown, I've really fallen in love with the guys who are doing all the same, like the heavy work. And but there's something about the lyric that has even another layer that is like almost like a proverb or something. Like if the more you think about it, the more it's there. And when I started to kind of find that place on Ultraviolet, it felt like it was adding another layer. Like I'm not trying to be obtuse because I'm trying to hide something.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make sure it's rewarding listen after listen. Like a lyric that I think about a lot that probably nobody else does, but it's on a song called Two Nights on Ultraviolet. And I say, it's the colors, not the shapes that haunt you. And that, when I wrote that, I was like, oh, that makes me think for a long time. And it says all the things I want to say about like not being able to put your finger on something and not quite understanding it. But it continues to be rewarding. So this record, more than ever, like I didn't want to be didactic because it's a record about discovery. And I really like was given the time to like fight for every line to be like, there is no song on this record that is about one thing. Like they are in the sense that there's a thesis to the song, but like Northstar, for instance, like started about watching my wife's incredible growth from therapy. Like my wife is already an incredible, healthy, accomplished person. She decided to go to therapy to work through some stuff she wanted to work through. And I've watched how much she's even blossomed. I didn't even think she could get better. And that was incredibly inspiring. And that's kind of like the seed of the song. But then as I start writing on it, there's so many other things that are connected. Mm-hmm. And so adding that richness, it's just, my other job is I'm a filmmaker. And like, when you can add intention to every process, like to the clothes that gets picked, to the lens that gets picked, to the camera, to the lighting, the viewer probably just likes or doesn't like the movie. But if they like it, if they feel something, it's because there's been artistry at every level. So I would say that like, yeah, there is a change, and it's that I'm trying to be less didactic. And I also am like falling in love with like what poetry really does. Like that poetry is so, when it's right, not bad poetry, not false poetry, is like so rich. There's so much to get there. And that is something where I know it when I see it. And sometimes you still say something on, I mean, that's the thing about art is like, you can't have there's got to be dynamics. So sometimes it's great to have a bald face line next to like a heady one, and like to have them like, you know, salty sweet. And like somehow it's like maybe the one line is your anchor when you first hear the song. Like that line makes sense to me. I don't know how that line makes sense, but the color's still right in my brain. And if that makes sense. I know I'm speaking very, very artistically now, but I am definitely not trying to hide anything. I do want to, more than ever. I realized this on my first interview, Brian, for this record, where they started asking me, and thankfully that's not this one, but I didn't even really have anything to say about the record. And I realized it was because in the past, everything would happen so fast. I would feel like I need to put the record on a plate, contextualize it, put a frame on it, and like make things clear. And this is the first time we're like, oh, the record says everything I want to say right now. And what I figured out was like, I still want to talk about the record, but as far as like, for the first time, I don't feel like I have to add a caveat. It's like, it's there, like listen to it. It's there, which is super satisfying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I think you've always written lyrics that have had something catching about them and have had moments that I've like been drawn to. I mean, Hail on Behold comes to mind. It's just like a song I love, but like,
thanks, Brian.
Late Bloomer. What's the line in Late Bloomer? I keep an hourglass on its side in my living room, so I'm always on time, or something it's like that.
I keep an hourglass set on its side, so it's always right now, and I'm always on time.
Yeah. Like I heard that, and I was like, "Oh, that's." I don't know what that means, but I'm like, I love that. That's so good. Like,
I think you do, Brian. I think you know. I think your soul knows. That was the first song I finished lyrically. And that was probably not the last lyric. Usually the last lyric isn't the last one I write of a song. Usually you're kind of fixing the middle at the end. Like you kind of figure out the beginning and the end, and then you sew them together. But that was the first line that had me like jump out of my chair and like pump fist in the air. Cause it's like, I could write 100 songs a day, but I wouldn't care about it. I wouldn't like any of them. Yeah. Like getting to a line, like I could have said, I want to write a line about being present. And about how like this more than ever, I feel like I have a young daughter. My marriage is like in such a good place. My home, my neighbor, everything is like, I just want to be here. Yeah. And then thinking about like, oh, the cover of Yet, our first kind of well-known record, is like is an hourglass. And I was like, oh, and then it just popped in my head and it feels, I say this all because it feels like discovery. It doesn't feel like I created it. It feels like I discovered it. But it was exactly what I remember running outside and telling Missy. I was like, babe, this one's so like I am an optimist too, and I like also enjoy it. So yeah, like when a line like that comes and it says exactly what you want it to say, but even more. But that's one of the ones that I'm I wouldn't say most proud of, but most thankful for sure on the record. And that's what you're fighting for on every line, you know?
Yeah. Album's called Loriella. Where'd that title come from?
Yeah, so I'd like to be a little cheeky on that one, Brian, and I'd like to kind of leave that for a while until the record's been out. But I can say a few things about it, which is it definitely means more than one thing to me, and they're all related. It doesn't like not competing things. It was early. I keep a list of like song titles or just like ideas. And it had been on my list forever. And I said to the guys early on, I was like, what if we name the record Loriella? The idea being something that people don't know what it means at first. It actually, the word is related to lots of things that match the tone. We knew that we wanted the record to be joyful, maybe triumphant's a better word, and empowered, because the last two records were about doubt and pain. And that was not a season I was in anymore. So I wouldn't be able to, and you just have a hangover. Like we've written enough, and I'm not angry right now. I'm empowered, which involves aggression. So that'll fit with our aesthetic. And it felt like a title that felt right, sounded right, and could be something where like a lot of times bands will self-title because they like want people to have a new entry point to a band. And that, I don't know, I've never liked that. I mean, I don't think they're wrong. I've never wanted to do it, but it was like Loriella will just be the name of this 10 songs. And people can just think of, once they start hearing the songs and seeing the artwork and the video, that'll be what Loriella means to them at first. And I don't know if you've seen, but you probably certainly heard of the movie Citizen Kane. Yeah. And there's the famous rosebud that you're trying to figure out. He says it on his deathbed. What does it mean, the whole movie? Yeah. And in the end, it's like this very practical, small thing. But when you really think about it, it actually means so much more to him. Like it has so much to do with his whole life and his innocence and the story of his life. And so in some ways, it's my own rosebud. And it means several things, but I wanted just something that people could meet without any prior knowledge or expectation, and let that be the name of the sound and the themes of this record.
Nice. Talk to me about the album artwork.
Yeah. So that's a guy named Eric Hertgen, who's like a world-class, like does all kinds of big, like he did a Sting cover, and like he's a big deal. He's actually a friend of Tanner's. And Tanner's like, I wonder if Eric would do it. And we reached out. We should never have been able to afford him, but he liked the songs, and he was like, all right, I want to create something. And we were like, we want it to look vibrant and bright, and we want it to be something that is not like immediately clear what it is. Yeah. And then he was like, oh, it should be also something that like even small, like people can know, if they see it far away, they're like, that's the Loriella cover. And because everybody's basically on phones and iPads now listening to their music. So, and he said, I'm probably going to come back with several designs, and my goal is going to be that at first some of them you won't like, but when they sit with, they'll maybe will make sense. And we're like, dude, say less. Like we are all trying, like we've had a ton of covers, we've done a ton of things. So like we want something different. We're trying to make something different. And so he came back with 5 options, and immediately, without even talking, we met and we're like, well, everybody in the band was like, I have a number one. And it was that cover. And it was like, it's the right color. It's the right vibe. There's something about freedom to it. There's something about beauty. There's, it is a cover where like, when you first see it, you're like, oh, what is that? And you're like, oh, okay. And then the longer you look, like, no, I don't know what that is. And that is exactly what it's meant to be. It's mostly vibes. And again, someday I can tell people how we made it. But it's like not nearly as interesting as like that. It looks kind of mysterious and fits whatever narrative is in your head, but like it just needed to be joyful and kind of not iconic in that we think we're a big deal, but like people could see it quickly and know, oh, that's my epic cover. What did it mean to you, Brian? What did you think it was?
I don't, I'm just a piece of metal on a fence. I was just like, what is this? I was like, it's interesting because so many people are doing like really cool, like the album artwork seems to be like this craft again. And like people are putting a lot of time and attention into it. And I was just like, That's interesting. I've not seen anything like that.
That was the hope. That was I mean, I'm a firm believer that's like the best choices are strong choices, and not all strong choices are good choices. Like you got to swing, and you can't hit homers all the time.
Yeah.
But for my part, like my favorite thing about being in a band is being in a band with like being collaborative with my friends. Yeah. And so if me and Nate and Tanner like are stoked about something, that's enough for me to want to put it out. I think so highly of their opinions as well. And I also knew it would make people think, and that the songs are not lacking for substance. Yeah. So I wasn't worried about it all feeling like, wow, it's just saying nothing. The cover says nothing. The title says nothing. The songs say nothing. That's not a worry. Yeah. So it was like, it feels right. And it will let people, I just, as much as we can, we wanted people to come to these songs and this record with like a clean palette. Yeah. And that's already hard enough to do when you're a band that's been around for 15 years. So anything else we could do to like help give us a fresh, like, no, can you reconsider us? Most people who listen to a lot of music, if they listen in our genre, they might have heard our name. Yeah. Whether they've heard music or not, I don't know. So what can we do to make them reconsider us, you know?
Yeah. Album's out in just about a month. What's this year look like? Are you guys going to try to hit the road and tour? Or are you going to take it easy and kind of let the music speak for itself?
Well, we'd love to tour. We like touring. We like playing shows. I mean, I have a kid and everybody owns businesses now. And so life is very busy. Yeah. So we are playing a short run around Audio Feed in the beginning of July. And then we're playing Furnace Fest, which is exciting. And we'll probably string some shows around that. I mean, honestly, we would like to tour more, but it's about just getting the right opportunities. Yeah. I mean, we have, over the years, we've gotten some cool direct support options. We only get to tour so much in a year with our work and our families. So it's like, we would hate to like do if it comes down to us needing to do a headliner to go see the fans and play the songs, we will. But we'd rather direct support someone else, get to play for some new fans, and our fans get to come and see an even higher level of production, which is what would happen if it was a bigger tour. Yeah. So we're sort of like, for now, we've got these few festivals. We're going to anchor some shows around them. And then we'll sort of see, like, you know, as the band is really active again, like, does our name get thrown in a couple conversations? And if not, we're happy to just tour for our fans. It's, if we tour for our fans, we make a little more money, but you know, it's at this phase, I think we're still the most excited about growth, and we would never say yes to something that like our fans would get like screwed on. So like, you know, any option we'd say yes to would be something we think our fans would want to go to. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully we will. We love playing. It's like my favorite part is connecting with the fans and being with the guys, other than the being away from my wife and daughter and dog part.
Hearts can be deceitful and the mind will lead astray. They taught you all about it in a song in second grade. That's a real conflict of interest when you put it in a certain light. Such a simple operation.
I think, and you've said too, we were trying to strike the balance as always of like the right amount of different. Like we're not trying to be a different band than the one we are. And we think we understand like some of our strengths and some of the things people like dynamic songs and really thoughtful lyrics and melodic, obviously. But we also don't ever want to do the same thing again. Like we've done that. Like if people like Blacklight or they like Hail, that whatever they like, great, we do too, and we'll still play it. So we want to write a new one, you know. And so hopefully, and the feedback we've gotten so far is like, yeah, it's the right amount of different. Like it's new. It is the most futuristic production we've ever gotten to do, and we're just so excited. People seem to be loving the first two tracks.